Hi, this is Phil McCauley from Labour Business TV, and with me I have our chair, Hamish Sandison. Good morning, Hamish. Let's have your view from the chair.
Good morning, Phil. It's great to be with you.
How are you, by the way? How's it all going?
Well, we live in extraordinary times, don't we, Phil? I mean, the challenges are obvious, the health challenge and then the looming economic disaster. But we also have opportunities, opportunities to bury austerity for good, to fund our public services and those who work in them properly, and to recalibrate our economic settlement with a Green New Deal, which will enable us to address the climate challenge. And I believe that good businesses have a massive role to play in addressing those challenges, but there cannot be any return to business as usual.
Yes, I agree. Now, in relation to Labour business, I mean, you're busy, or you're busier now than you've ever been, ever. There's a lot going on, especially under Keir Starmer's new leadership and the new team. Tell us what you're up to, what's on the agenda for Labour business, and what should we be looking out for over the next weeks to come?
Yes, you're right, Phil. I mean, the economy is quiet, but we're not unbusy. Our first priority during the lockdown, which more or less coincided with the election of Keir Starmer on April the 4th, was to engage with his new leadership team. So first of all, we've helped Keir to frame a new message to business, which is, as I was saying earlier, that Labour sees business as part of the solution to the massive challenges that we face as a country. And then we've worked directly with Annalise Dodds, his new Shadow Chancellor, and with Ed Miliband, his new Shadow Business Secretary, to help them to engage with business, where the message is Labour is listening to business. And as an example of that, we co-hosted a webinar with QuickBooks, which are published by Intuit, and the Federation of Small Businesses, looking at the impact of the virus on the business community, and that attracted a very big business audience. And then we've also endeavored, even despite lockdown, to reach out to our members. And the first example of that has been a webinar we did with Lucy Powell MP, who is the new Shadow Business Minister. And we had a very good session with her to talk about the impact of coronavirus on businesses, and also to look at the shortcomings in both the policy and the delivery of the government's financial package. So that's a way in which we're giving members a real opportunity to engage with the new leadership. And by the way, that webinar is recorded on our website. It was recorded through Zoom. So members and others can watch it, and it's really worth watching. It was a very, very interesting and useful session.
Great, so everybody should look at labourbusiness.org for that. Now, what's your sense? Annalise is doing really well at the dispatch box. She's had some great political moments already, but she's such an incredibly intelligent and brilliant operator. How do you feel in terms of her discussion with Rishi Sunak and the economics of the lockdown and the post-lockdown economy? What does she need to be thinking about right now?
Well, I agree with you. She's done an outstanding job. I mean, she had the benefit of being in the Shadow Treasury team before, so there's continuity. Frankly, it's great as well that she's the first woman Shadow Chancellor that we've had. And of course, as you know, Labour Business last year launched a Women in Business policy group. And so Annalise is a fantastic role model for women in business. And yes, she's engaged directly with the Chancellor. And indeed, when we did a survey of our members on the impact of coronavirus, we made sure that she had that, and she shared that with the Chancellor. And so we're having a very direct impact, not only through opposition, but through the government, to try to compile the evidence on which policy should be based. I mean, as Labour Business, that's our mission, is to promote evidence-based business policies. So that survey was really, really important in doing that. We've also, of course, engaged with Parliament directly through the Business Select Committee, until recently chaired by Rachel Reeves, now chaired by Darren Jones, both Labour MPs, obviously. And we have supplied 2 submissions, which again go right down to the grassroots of our members who are Labour Party members in businesses up and down the country, telling their stories, producing their evidence of how the government's financial package is not getting to those who really need it. So in a very direct way, we feel, A, that we've done what we ought to be doing, which is compiling the evidence, but B, that evidence has actually been used to help fix the problems. Because as Keir has said, this is not about opposition for opposition's sake. It's about trying to fix the problems in the government's response to the economic crisis.
Now, you, like Guy and everybody else in the country, we've seen Keir's performance at the dispatch box, which has been incredibly great and detailed. How do you think he's going to need to think about preparing for the time when all the Tory MPs come back and they're doing their usual Etonian braying behind Johnson? Will he remain steadfast, and is that the best approach?
I think that's right, Phil. Like you, I've been very impressed with what has to be called his forensic approach to Prime Minister's questions and to the work of Parliament generally. And it very much chimes with what I was saying earlier, that it's all about adducing the evidence as you would in a courtroom. Nothing can be proved in a courtroom without evidence. And sadly, Parliament in recent years seems to have been an evidence-free forum. So he started to change that. We have a part to play in providing him with the case histories, the evidence that he needs to question in a constructive way, but to question what the government says it's aiming to do and what it is actually achieving. So if and when Parliament comes back in person, in a way that it isn't back in person now, as only a few people are sitting in the chamber when the MQs takes place. But if they come back, then I don't see any reason, to be honest, why he should change his approach. I just hope it will show up that the bar, you know, the booing and the shouting in PMQs and at other times in the chamber is not a way for a grown-up democracy to work. So I hope that he can continue with his style, which I think is the right style for the leader of the opposition. And I hope that other people will be shamed into treating Parliament more seriously and listening to the questions and listening to the answers.
And one of the things that you championed as chair of Labour Business is bringing expertise to hand to help shadow teams think about policy, think about their positioning. I just wanted to ask you a little bit about this. I mean, obviously the Prime Minister has been through coronavirus and we wish him well with his recovery. We want to beat him at the dispatch box and not in the emergency room, of course, and we hope he continues to recover well. But I think it's becoming clear that the advice he's getting on a political level from Cummings and others seems to be a little bit unreliable. What is the role of expertise in terms of advising Labour, in terms of the Labour win for 2024?
Well, I think that the socialist societies, 21 of them, of whom Labour Business is one, are incredibly important and valuable resource for the party in terms of applying expertise to policy making. And of course, at the moment, we're in opposition, so we're not writing laws, but we are challenging the policy, for example, in the immigration bill just recently introduced into Parliament. And I think the role of Labour Business and other social societies is to draw on this rich talent pool from business, from academia. Our members are an incredibly diverse group. There are hundreds of them up and down the country in businesses, small, medium, and large. They're in every part of the UK. And what we've done through our surveys is to give them an opportunity to provide that evidence base for policy making, but also we usually have an open question at the end of each survey to say, would you like to add anything? And we've had some incredibly powerful testimony from our members. And obviously it's anonymous, so I won't name this individual, but we had an individual who provided us with incredibly valuable and timely advice about the impact of Brexit on the border in Northern Ireland. And that was very, very important evidence for Labour to formulate its Brexit policy. Now, of course, Brexit will happen. We obviously accept that result. But our latest survey, which is now out with our members, is about the extension for the negotiations, which, if it's not requested by the end of June, will mean that we have either a very bad deal or even possibly a no deal by the end of this year, which would add an economic catastrophe to a health crisis. So we are arguing very strongly that Parliament should agree to an extension. It's not to thwart Brexit, nobody's suggesting that, but it is to concentrate on what's important. First things first, which is the first rule of fighting a war or fighting a pandemic. You concentrate on what's immediately to hand, and that is the health crisis. So we're suggesting that whether you're a Brexiteer, a Leaver, a Remainer, in business, in politics, you should support an extension so that the government can get on with the job of fighting the virus, and we create some time next year to negotiate the best possible deal for our future relationship with the EU.
It does seem incredibly unlikely and un-Johnson that there's going to be an extension, and all the mood music and all the messaging coming out of Downing Street is flatly refusing to even contemplate that. If it is the case that there's no extension, what does the Labour Party need to be thinking about in terms of its response to the inevitable worsening of the economic position that the short-term change will at least mean?
Well, this is where our policy groups come in, Phil. There's no silver bullets here, but it means detailed, evidence-based, painstaking policy work to furnish the Labour front bench and the wider Labour policy development process through the National Policy Forum, through select committees and other units within the party, to develop the policies we need to completely transform our economic settlement. As I said earlier, that has to be through some sort of Green New Deal in which the jobs that are lost in the old carbon economy, the jobs that have been lost, sadly, as a result of the pandemic, can be found in doing the work that needs to be done to tackle the climate crisis. So that is where, as well as a challenge, we have that real opportunity. And Ed Miliband, as Shadow Business and Energy Secretary, is going to be doing some really important work to develop the thinking on that Green New Deal. And we have a green policy group, which will be working hand in glove with the Shadow Front Bench to develop that. And I think that's the way forward. We don't have immediate answers, but if we ignore the problem, things are going to get very much worse, because the pandemic is just the start of our economic woes. If we do not address the climate crisis, then we are going to be in even deeper trouble. So I do encourage our members to join the policy groups. I'll be sending out a message shortly. We're going to revamp some of them so that they're more fit for purpose. And if you're a member of Labour Business, you can join those policy groups. And I encourage all our members to join, because the Labour Party needs us.
I just want to ask you now about business liaison officers and the approach that Ed Miliband and Labour Business is taking to that. Tell us about what's happened so far and what's going to happen next.
Yes, it's a really important initiative, Phil. Obviously, at the national level, Labour Business, being a national group, engages with front benchers, with the National Policy Forum in the party and other party units. But it's equally important, if not more important, that we engage locally. And we can't do that from the centre. And we shouldn't do it from London. We need to do it at the local level. So we have invited every constituency Labour Party up and down the country to appoint what we're calling a business liaison officer, or BULO. We've chosen that word because it echoes the TULO, the trade union liaison officer, because we see the BULOs working in partnership with the TULOs. It gives expression to our view that the way forward for our economy is for government and businesses and workers and their trade unions to form a social partnership. That, in our view, is the right way to move forward and get out of this crisis. So many constituencies have already appointed a BULO. but we're going to challenge all Labour MPs and all Labour constituencies, whether they have a Labour MP or not, to appoint their bureau by December, because there's a very important day coming up on December the 5th, which is Small Business Saturday. And it's really, really important that we use that to bring back life to our high streets, to encourage our small businesses to get back to selling their goods and their services, and for the local communities to support that. So it's essential that constituency Labour parties know who their local businesses are, engage with them, have that conversation with them to show that we are listening to business and that we do want to work in partnership with business, and that business is part of the solution. So that challenge to appoint a bureau throughout the country by December is one that we'll be working on very hard over the coming months.
That sounds good. And yesterday I was speaking at length with Philip Ross, our Labour business member, who is our ambassador for the self-employed, and he was going through some amazing statistics with me yesterday. There are 5 million or so self-employed people, and it ranges from entrepreneurs but to cleaners, to anybody who's doing work on their own, and they're all essentially individual businesses. And a business liaison officer isn't just somebody who's going to be outreaching to companies. There's a whole community of people whose livelihood depend on their own ability to generate their own income. And this is an important constituency for Labour going into the 2024 election. And Philip is particularly keen on looking at rights for people who are self-employed. What can Labour business do to focus the minds and the attention of our policymakers on that?
Well, I think the first point to make is that, contrary to myth, the Tories are not the only party of business. We probably have more people, including a great many self-employed people in business, who are members of the Labour Party than the Conservative Party has. I mean, we've got over 500,000 members, and many of them are active in small, medium and large businesses, and many of them are in the forefront of the freelance sector. So we bring real experience to bear on policy making, and we see the role of Labour business there as collecting that evidence and ensuring that it is the basis for which policy is made. There are a number of policy problems with small and businesses and the self-employed. Taxation is one of them, and we need to see that our policy making is informed by the actual real life experience of those who are self-employed or work in small businesses of one kind or another. And the bureau at the local level is absolutely critical to that. Talking to the local business community, making the point that we are a party of business and that we are listening to business. And I hope that's going to begin to shift the perception of the Labour Party, so that when we come to the next election, it will be right for us to say that we are the natural party of business, because we believe in growing a sustainable economic model in a partnership of government, business, workers and their unions.
Hamish Sandison, thank you very much for your time today, and we look forward to seeing you very soon.
Thank you, Phil.